Guru's blessings, impossible also becomes possible. So Swagatam in Sanskrit, Swagatam in Hindi, Nalvaravu in Tamil, and welcome in English are all synonyms to cordiality, goodwill, and warmth. Here then is Sri V. Shankar, Chairman of the Governing Council of the Vidyalaya, to formally welcome the august gathering.
गोविंद देशिकम उपास्य शिराय भक्त्यां तस्मिन् स्थिते निजमाहि मुनि विदेह मुक्त्यां अद्वैत्य भाष्यम उपकल्प दिशो विजित्यां कांचीपुरे स्थितम् अवापसा शंकराय ऋतिश्रुति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शंकरं लोकशंकरं अपार करुणा सिंधुं ज्ञानतं शांतरूपिणं श्री चंद्रशेखर गुरुं प्रणमामि मुदाम्यहम् सदाशिव समारंभां शंकराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वंदे गुरु परंपरां. With benediction to Adi Shankaracharya and to his lineage up to the 69th Acharya of the venerated Kamakoti Peetam Pujya Sri Jayendra Saraswati Swamigal and the 70th Acharya Pujya Sri Shankar Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal, in whose benign and august presence this function is being held, I rise to address you today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this pleasant and solemn function, organized this evening on the eve of the 119th birth anniversary of Pujya Sri Chandrasekharendra Saraswati Swamiji, the 68th Shankaracharya of the venerated Kamakoti Peetam, to name the Veda Pathashala in Sri Kanchi Mahaswami Vidya Mandir after one of the celebrated sons of this country, one of the illustrious sons of this land, Dr. L.M. Singhvi. It is an era which is dominated by plague for pounds, as they call it in Britain, or donation for nameplates, as we call it in India. This function graduates far, far away from those conventional norms of naming institutions. It's a genuine reflection, a manifestation of the abiding interest that we have in the great sons of this country who had perpetuated the greatness of this land, the holy traditions of this land. In the league of those great men comes Dr. L.M. Singhvi, whom we remember today by naming this Pathshala after him. It is therefore an expression of gratitude to this great son of this country. It's a firm belief that countless number of students who pass out from the portals of this institution shall draw inspiration not just from the name of Dr. Singhvi, but we also be blessed to carry forward the legacy of this land, and as they shape the destiny of this land in the years ahead, they shall be effective as Dr. L.M. Singhvi was during his living times. Exactly 2 years before, on the 4th of June 2010, the entire complex, the Vedic block, were consecrated to the blessed hands of the Shankaracharyas of Kanchi. And 2 years later, we are giving it a name. The Mahaswami of Kanchi had great apprehensions during his time about the state of education. This institution of ours is an humble step forward in giving expression to those fears that the Mahaswami had, that we could give an answer to that. We wish we had done it during his living times. Better late than never, that we thought that the greatest tribute that we can pay to the sage of Kanchi is to relive all that he said during his living times. The Mahaswami used to wonder, given the state of the social type of living that we have, and the type of education that is being imparted in this country, whether at all the children of this blessed land of ours will ever imbibe the social and the spiritual values of this blessed land. The Mahaswami used to observe that the education that is being given during his time was no different from the education that was given either in the medieval times or even in the ancient times. What has really undergone a change about the Mahaswami was the manner and the form in which education was being delivered. And the Mahaswami in his discourses used to give a simile. He said the medicine that is being administered is absolutely the same. But if the contraindications, the limitations of administering the medicine, and those restrictions on the usage of medicine are not being followed, the very same medicine will become a poison. And that exactly has happened to the state of education in the country. The sage of Kanchi went further and said that the Gurukula system of education had stood the test of time. It had reinforced the commitment in the culture of this land. But Mahaswami was practical, as all of us know. He knew 200 years of history that Lord Macaulay gave to us in those celebrated 1832 address, which gave the Anglicization of education in this country, cannot be overturned even by 100% reform process in this country. The last one. Hey. The Mahaswami therefore was practical enough to say that much as we would continue the relics that the British have given unto us, some of which will be relevant in the contemporary times ahead, it would also be necessary that we integrate ancient education into the mainstream education. He went further and exhorted his devotees and said, just as we keep things in the museum, let's have at least some schools of the Gurukula type in the various parts of the country, so that the generation next and the generations that follow will at least get a glimpse of what education in ancient India was and how was it able to realize the fruits of education. It is Mahaswami's belief that in the Gurukula system of education, where the teacher and the taught stayed together, it was beyond the teaching. And therefore, it instilled, fostered in the taught a sense of bhakti, a bhakti which was an antidote for all the evils in the society, one that was a panacea for all the ills that plagued the society, and more importantly, one that would have made the education system that was imparted by the Guru, who also was a beneficiary of the services rendered by the taught, more relevant to the taught. This blessed land of ours is a living history, my dear friends, which spans several millennia. Westerners have always wondered, what is it that has kept this nation united, despite all those vociferous tendencies, those divisive elements that seem to have rocked this society, those languages that we have, those religions that we practice, those caste beliefs that all come to us. This ancient land of ours has got 18 major languages, 1,600 minor languages and dialects, 6,400 castes and subcastes, 52 major tribes, 6 major religions, 29 states, 7 union territories. I don't know the count if they have increased, all rolled and fused into one, called as Bharat or India. Mark Twain called it as the cradle of human civilization, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of tradition, and the great-grandmother of legend. If singularly there is one cause that we can identify in history that was instrumental, that was responsible for the unification of this land, despite the balkanization of several mighty powers across the globe, it is the culture of this land. And from that culture flew the education of this land. And therefore the ancient education too had a role to play in the unification of this blessed land of ours. Dr. Lakshmimal Singhvi was a man far ahead of his times. He was the voice of eternal India. In fact, he was an amalgam of all those virtues that you can expect to be endowed in a human being. And therefore he was a perfect human being in that sense of the term. He was an author, he was a poet, he was a linguist, he was a jurist, he was a constitutional expert, he was a humanist, a champion of universal brotherhood and love, a person who was proficient in Sanskrit, an authority on Rig Veda, and more importantly, a man of ancient art, fine art, and literature. Beyond all these things, he was also a skillful diplomat, a parliamentarian with exciting, unbelievable, enviable debating skills, powered by an analytical mind which analyzed every issue before him rationally and never bent on partisan lines or ones based on prejudices or pride. Small wonder we remember such a man today. And therefore, when we remember Dr. L.M. Singhvi, we are remembering the greatness of this land. This institution was started with the inspiration of the sage of Kanchi. But the sage of Kanchi also believed that in contemporary times, that the education that is being delivered in this country, for the matter all across the globe, is oriented to giving a livelihood to people. It's job oriented. And therefore, in a scheme of education which ultimately provides only jobs, there is very little scope or space for Vedic education. So unless we integrate the Vedic education into the mainstream education and also find a place for it, sooner or later it will demise. The 1300 odd shakas that comprise the 4 Vedas, today we have reduced it to 11 shakas. which also are on the verge of being fossilized and transferred to the archives of this land of ours. It is only by a concentrated effort of integrating mainstream education with Vedic education shall we ever think and possible to survive this land that the Mahaswami ignited all during his living times, 87 years of his monkhood, that he spread the cause of Vedas, that we can sustain it. Dr. L.M. Singhvi was a champion, no less than the Mahaswami, for this type of education. In fact, of the several correspondents that he used to write to me, he used to write by hand. His hand, even at the age of 72, 73, when he used to correspond with me, I was fortunate that at the last leg of his life journey, the last decade of his life sojourn, I had the benefit of knowing him. The more you know him, the more you will appreciate him, the more you will understand him, the more you will envy him, the more you will think of the greatness of this man. Oliver Goldsmith was not wrong when he said in Village Schoolmaster, of the schoolmaster when he says at the end, I don't want to quote the entire thing, it's a long one to go, how much can this small head carry, he says. That was typical of L.M. Singhvi. How much could that small head carry? Everything on the earth. There is no subject that he had left over that you would not get an answer from Dr. L.M. Singhvi. And in the several correspondence that he used to make to me, I was also privileged to get a share of the erudition and scholarship of Dr. L.M. Singhvi. Whenever he used to make an address in any of those world for us, he was a universal man. He was not one who was limited by boundaries or by narrow limitations of caste, region, country. In fact, he had gone beyond, his mind was so expansive that he had gone much, much beyond that. In the true sense of the Upanishad term, he was that person that the Vedas had said, I am Nijah Parovedi, Gananam Laguchetasam, Udhara Charitanam tu Vasudaiva Kutumpakam. We won't speak that the world is a family, but we practice all that does not make the world a family. But Dr. Singhvi was an ardent devotee of globalization. He always used to exhort people and say in his addresses that we should think globally, but we should act locally. There is nothing in life which is local which cannot be global. And there is equally so, conversely, there is nothing in life which is local which cannot be global. And therefore he exhorted people to believe that we should think globally, but when it comes to acting, customize it to the needs of the land. Most of the contemporary words that we use in today's parlance and the ones that have entered into the drawing rooms of most of our houses were the ones, some of them, most of them were coined by Dr. L.M. Singhvi. Very few people would know about the greatness of this man in relation to these acronyms, these nomenclatures. He left his imprint on social legislation, on habeas corpus, on ombudsman, on free legal aid, on public interest protection. There is nothing in the jurisprudence that he had not left over to leave his footprints in the sands of time. And in the year 1963, he coined for the first time the two words, the Lokpal and the Lokayukta. Half a century later, or to be precise, 49 years later, we are still grappling with the vision that he had envisioned for the office of the Lokayukta to bring in and impute a sense of accountability, including his son who has been fighting through the committees of the parliament to bring an office of accountability. But that, the word of the Lokayukta and Lokpal, were brought into being, into the dictionary by Dr. L.M. Singhvi. I don't know how many people would know about it. He was a champion of human rights, but fiercely independent. He adored Madam Indira Gandhi during her times. But in the year 1975, when she suspended public rights, imposed emergency, and momentarily suspended habeas corpus, Dr. L.M. Singhvi reacted the way nobody else would have reacted. He changed his farmhouse name. It was Ekant. It was solitude, peace. He changed it into habeas corpus, sending home the signal to Madam Indira Gandhi, how close I can be to you. I don't cherish what is being done. The word Bharat Vamshi that we hear, persons of Indian origin, were again coined by Dr. L.M. Singhvi. PIO has entered into the statute books of the government of India, thanks to the first time when he created in a world forum, when he said, Bharat Vamshi, people of Indian origin, persons of Indian origin, the dual citizenship, the seeds of thought that were put in during the 1960s, and for the first time he conceived this very thought. He was a champion of conservation of the environment. In one of his addresses in the United Nations fora, not the direct United Nations, he coined for the first time the word ecocide. And he said, genocide is an onslaught on a section of people, on a community of people, or on a class of people. Ecocide is genocide on the entire humanity. Not only that, it alters the balance of nature. This was the greatness of Dr. L.M. Singhvi. He never left anything behind but the class that he belonged to. Of this, he used to send across all those speeches to me. The moment he used to deliver some of the speeches that had come to me, even in the transcript stage, asking whether I have something to add. Who can add anything to the Jambavan's address? But then I felt pleasure that to a young boy, I was very young during those days, that he sent across to me to read, and sent even the final text to me. Erudition and scholarship were soaking in those addresses that Dr. Singhvi used to give. Like the thread which holds on to the garland, those flowers that beautifully make the garland, I also became a thread in that ocean of knowledge of this great person, and drew the fragrance from that person, remaining the thread which held on to all the ornaments that he gave to the world of literature, to the world of law, and to philosophy and understanding. On the 7th of December 2005, Dr. Singhvi wrote a long letter. In my extempore address, I don't want to miss out the exact words that Dr. Singhvi wrote. I don't want to labor to read out the entire thing. 2 lines I want to read out as to what he said. In fact, for the first time in my lifetime, I brought something written, because I don't want to say something which is not exactly what he said. And this is what he wrote to me when he said, "My dear and esteemed V. Shankar, with affectionate appreciation for sharing my visions and dreams, and for being such an ardent and inspiring devotee of the great sage of our times, the divine Paramacharya, whose grace abides in my life." That's what he said, that the grace of Paramacharya abides in my life. And then that later reiterated that the combination education that we are practicing here today, and told me that this is the vision for education in the 20th century, in the 21st century, and let's all work towards bringing this into being. This institution of ours. And before I come to this, is concern for migrant labor. I should not forget that. Is concern for migrant labor who have gone to far-flung areas across the globe in distant lands in the world, was to be seen to be believed. He was a champion of human rights, and he protected their rights as well. And then he used to always say, whatever they touched and turned, they did not find the gold. But whatever they touched, they turned it into gold. This was the case of migrant Indians, the plantation workers, those workers who went for a living, and the Karma Bhumi where they had gone, which they had adopted as their hometown, they converted that into gold, and an economic prosperity they brought into being. And therefore he championed the cause with unremitting attention, vigor, all through his life. He came to Mumbai on the 14th of February 2006 along with Kanda Singhvi, and he gave that celebrated address, the centenary oration of the Mahaswami, and he spoke on the timeless heritage and the contribution of Mahaswami to the cause of Sanatana Dharma. Whosoever was present to listen to that address that day will believe and endorse what I say. Never before, never after can we get an address of the class, the manner in which it was delivered, and the power with which it was packed to drive home not only the contribution to Mahaswami, but the greatness of this blessed land of ours. This monument that we have erected over here is a living expression as a tribute to the great sage of our country. Thanks to the pioneering efforts of the sages of Kanchi, we were able to see the light of the day exactly 2 years before when we brought this into being. Not only that, this is again a tribute to Dr. L.M. Singhvi. And therefore, when I suggested to the sages that we should name this institution after L.M. Singhvi, they said, it took you so much time to think, you should have done before. On the same day when we inaugurated this building, I thought when we are inaugurating this building, it's called as Chandrasekhar Kanchi Mahaswami Vidyalaya, and therefore it was decided to name the Veda Pathshala after Dr. L.M. Singhvi. Countless number of students who will pass out of the portals of this institution, I am sure, will be doubly blessed, not only from the sage of Kanchi and the sages of Kanchi who are present and whose benediction is always available, more importantly, of this person who is all pervading, permeating, enduring, who will live in this campus and bless these children. The greatest tribute that we can pay to him is just not by putting the name plaque, putting his name and say we have named it after him. I think the greatest Shraddhanjali we can pay to the celebrated son of this country is to ensure that all that he tended during his living times, at least in relation to the culture of this land, at least in relation to the Vedic culture of this land, is realized during our times or in the generation next. And therefore, if this were to become a successful model, the sage of Kanchi and Dr. Singhvi will shower their grace on all of us so that we can make our lives sublime. Tennyson in his Elysee said, "Friends, let's come together. It's not too late to change the world." That time beckons us. That time has come for us to reinvent the world order. The one that Dr. Singhvi envisioned during his living times, the Catholicity outlook that he had of a global village that he spoke about, that the Vedas had enshrined. And that let's begin the journey of getting into the community of nations, being the most powerful nation that we should as we travel along, but at the same time, the Guru Bhumi that it is, that it shall provide education and sustenance to the world over. Let me come to the end of my address with the long Irish blessings. Ireland is known for its blessings, but then all blessings run into several pages. Let me just take the last two lines of one of those blessings and tell you, until we meet again, may the Lord hold us in the bosom of his hands. Thank you and God bless you all.